The knock on my door came at 6:17 a.m. Sharp, hesitant, like whoever stood on the other side wasn't sure they had the right to be there. I already knew who it was, because 15 years ago, my father looked me in the eyes and said, "Get out and don't ever come back." And now, they were back, standing on my porch, with a secret I had buried so deep I thought it would die with me. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal, and if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. I was 17 when my world split in two. Back then, my dad was my hero, the kind of father who fixed broken bikes at midnight, who showed up to every school recital, who told me I could be anything if I worked hard enough. We weren't rich, we weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or at least I thought we were. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who believed their family was unbreakable until it wasn't. So many of you wrote about secrets, about betrayals that didn't come from strangers, but from the people who were supposed to protect you. That's why I'm telling you this, because the day my father kicked me out wasn't just about anger. It was about a secret, and I was the one holding it. The summer before senior year, my dad started acting different. He'd come home late, he'd avoid eye contact, he'd lock his office door when he was inside. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. Parents have stress, adults have problems. I didn't want to be dramatic. But one night, I heard shouting. Not the normal kind, the kind that sounds like something is breaking, not physically, but emotionally. I crept down the stairs and heard my mom say, "How long has this been going on?" Silence. Then my dad's voice, low and strained, "It doesn't matter." It mattered. It mattered more than anything. The next day, my mom didn't come out of her room, and my dad told me everything was fine. That was the moment I knew something wasn't. The truth didn't come all at once. It slipped out in pieces. A receipt in his jacket pocket from a hotel 2 towns over, a lipstick shade my mom would never wear on his collar, a late-night phone call where he whispered someone else's name. I didn't want to believe it, but I did. And that's the curse of being observant. Once you see something, you can't unsee it. The night I confronted him, I thought I was doing the right thing. I said, "Dad, I know." He froze. And in that single pause, I saw fear in his eyes. Not guilt, fear. He grabbed my arm harder than he ever had before. "What exactly do you think you know?" My voice shook, but I didn't back down. "You're cheating on Mom." There it was, the truth. The air between us turned electric, dangerous. For a second, I thought he might confess, apologize, fix it. Instead, he leaned in close and said something I'll never forget. "If you tell her, you'll regret it." That was the moment my hero disappeared and a stranger took his place. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about my mom upstairs, about the way she looked broken already, even without the full truth. I told myself I'd protect her, that I wouldn't let him manipulate me. So the next morning, I told her everything. I thought she would thank me. I thought she would hug me. I thought we would face him together. Instead, she stared at me like I had just detonated a bomb inside our house. "You misunderstood," she whispered. "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did," she snapped, something she had never done before. That was the first time I realized secrets don't just protect the guilty, they protect the fragile. When my dad came home that evening, she had already told him. He didn't yell at first. He didn't need to. The disappointment in his face was worse than rage. "You betrayed me." I laughed in disbelief. "You betrayed me? You had no right to interfere in my marriage." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "I was protecting Mom." He stepped closer. "You don't understand adult relationships." And then he said the sentence that changed my life forever. "If you can't respect this family, you don't belong in it." I thought it was an empty threat until he dragged my suitcase from my closet and threw it at my feet. Pack. My mom stood in the hallway, silent, watching, not defending me, not stopping me, just watching. That silence hurt more than his words. I packed in 20 minutes. 17 years old, no plan, no savings, no idea where to go. As I stepped outside, he said it, "Don't come back." The door slammed, and just like that, I was homeless. I didn't know it then, but that wasn't the end of the betrayal. It was only the beginning. Because the secret I thought I exposed wasn't the real secret at all. And 15 years later, that knock on my door would prove it. I remember the sound of that door slamming behind me more clearly than anything else. It echoed in my chest, not just rejection, but erasure. In one moment, I went from daughter to outsider. I stood on the sidewalk with one suitcase and a phone at 4% battery. It was late September. The air was cold enough to sting, but not cold enough to justify what had just happened. I called the only person I trusted, my best friend, Lena. When she answered, I couldn't even form words at first, just breathing, shaky, uneven. "Are you crying?" she asked. "He kicked me out." Silence. "Come here," she said immediately. No hesitation. That was the first time I understood something important. Blood doesn't always define family. Choice does. Lena's parents let me stay for what was supposed to be a few days. Those few days turned into 3 months. I slept on a pull-out couch. I finished my senior year pretending everything was normal. I told teachers my parents were going through stuff. I told classmates I needed space. I lied for them. Isn't that ironic? The girl who exposed the truth became the one covering it up. My dad never called. My mom never texted. No birthday message, no check-ins. Just silence. And silence, when it comes to parents, is deafening. By December, Lena's mom gently told me I needed something more permanent. They loved me, but they weren't my legal guardians, and my dad had made it very clear I was not to return. So I got a job. After school, I worked at a grocery store stocking shelves until midnight. On weekends, I babysat. I saved every dollar like survival depended on it, because it did. I graduated high school exhausted, proud, and completely alone. No parents in the crowd, no celebratory dinner, just Lena clapping louder than anyone else. I didn't cry that day. I had already cried enough. College wasn't part of the plan anymore. Survival was. I rented a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin, the floors creaked, the smell of detergent seeped into everything I owned. But it was mine. And in that tiny apartment, I made a promise to myself. I will never beg to belong anywhere again. Years passed. I worked, I built, I healed, slowly. At 22, I started filming small videos on my phone. Nothing dramatic at first, just thoughts, life lessons, tiny reflections about independence and boundaries. People started listening. Strangers related to my story of being cut off, of rebuilding from nothing. My channel grew quietly, organically. I never mentioned my parents by name. I never told the full story. Because even after everything, a part of me still wanted to protect them. That's the complicated thing about love. Even when it fractures, it doesn't disappear completely. When I was 25, I saw my mom once, by accident. I was in a bookstore downtown. I turned a corner, and there she was, holding a novel, looking older, smaller. She saw me too. For a split second, I thought she'd run toward me. Instead, she froze. We stood there like strangers in a movie scene that had no script. Finally, I said, "Hi." Her lips trembled. "You look well," she said. "So do you." Another silence. There were 1,000 questions between us, 1,000 apologies unsaid. But what she chose to say was this: "Your father wouldn't want us talking." And just like that, she walked away again. I didn't chase her. I think that was the moment I truly became an adult. By 30, my life looked stable from the outside. I had a decent apartment, a steady income from my growing channel, a small circle of friends who felt like family. But there was always a locked door inside me, the part that wondered, why was he so afraid that night? Why did he react with fear instead of guilt? And why did my mom protect him so fiercely? The cheating explanation never fully made sense. It felt incomplete, like I had only seen the surface. Then 3 months ago, something strange happened. I received a message from a private account. No profile picture, no posts, just one sentence. "You were right, but you never knew the whole truth." I replied immediately, "Who is this?" No response. I checked the profile every day for a week. Nothing. Until it disappeared. Deleted. I told myself it was a prank, a troll. The internet can be cruel. But something in my gut told me otherwise, because the wording was specific. You were right. Right about what? The affair? Or something bigger? 2 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello?" There was breathing on the other end. Then, "My name is Claire." The voice was soft, older, careful. "I think you know my husband." Ice flooded my veins. "Who?" She hesitated. "Your father." The room started spinning. "I don't have a father," I said automatically. There was a pause heavy enough to crush steel. "He's very sick," she said quietly. And that was the moment the past stopped being the past. I hung up. I didn't ask questions. I didn't confirm details. I just sat there, very sick. Those words shouldn't have affected me. He had chosen his life without me. But grief is complicated. Even the possibility of losing someone who rejected you hurts. I told myself I wouldn't get involved. I owed him nothing. Nothing. But that night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words. My husband. Claire. Not an affair. A husband. The next morning I searched his name online for the first time in years, and what I found shattered everything I thought I knew. Public records. A marriage certificate, dated 16 years ago, 1 year before he kicked me out. He wasn't just cheating. He had another life, another marriage, and legally, another family. My hands started shaking so violently I dropped my phone. The timeline didn't add up. If he married her a year before I confronted him, then what exactly was my mom protecting? And why did she say I misunderstood? The secret I thought I exposed was only a fragment. And now, after 15 years, they were reaching out. Not to apologize, not to reconnect, but because he was dying, and they needed something. That's when the knock came. 6:17 a.m. Sharp, hesitant. I walked toward the door slowly. Every step felt like walking back into a burning house. When I opened it, 2 people stood there. A woman I recognized from pictures, Claire, and beside her, a boy, maybe 14, with my father's eyes. The boy didn't blink. He just stared at me like he was trying to solve a math equation he didn't understand. Claire stood slightly behind him as if shielding him from whatever reaction I might have. Her hair was streaked with gray, pulled back in a low bun. She looked tired, not just physically, but the kind of tired that settles into your bones after years of holding something heavy. "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice wasn't demanding. It wasn't dramatic. It was careful. I glanced at the boy again. He looked so much like my father that my chest tightened. Same sharp cheekbones, same intense eyes, but there was something softer in his expression, uncertainty instead of authority. "What's his name?" I asked. Claire hesitated. "Ethan." Of course, it was something simple, something normal. "How old are you?" I asked him directly. 14. 14, which meant he was born the year after I was kicked out. The math slammed into me like a train. I stepped aside. 5 minutes, I said. They walked into my apartment quietly, like guests in a museum. Ethan's eyes scanned the room. He noticed the camera set up in the corner, the framed silver YouTube plaque on the wall, the life I had built. He didn't look impressed. He looked conflicted. Claire sat on the edge of my couch, but didn't relax into it. "I don't know where to start," she said. "Try the truth," I replied. She swallowed. "Your father never stopped talking to you." I laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "That's interesting, because he stopped talking to me." Ethan flinched at the tension. Claire continued carefully. "He made mistakes, terrible ones, but he thought he was protecting you." "By throwing me out?" She closed her eyes for a second, as if bracing herself. "You weren't supposed to find out the way you did." "There wasn't a good way to find out he had 2 wives," I snapped. Her head jerked up. "You know about the marriage?" "I found the certificate." Silence fell thick between us. Ethan's fingers tightened around the hem of his hoodie. "You deserve the full truth," Claire said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "I do." She exhaled slowly. "When I met your father, he told me he was separated." My stomach turned. "He said the marriage was over, that they were staying together for you until you graduated." My pulse pounded in my ears. "He said your mother knew." I shook my head. "She didn't." Claire's face crumpled slightly. "Then he lied to both of us." The room felt too small. "So what?" I said. "He lied, he cheated, he built a second family. That doesn't explain why I was the one punished." Claire's eyes filled with something close to guilt. "Because when you confronted him, you threatened the timeline." What does that even mean? It meant the truth was coming out too soon. The pieces started sliding together, slowly, dangerously. I said quietly, "He wasn't ready to leave." Claire nodded once. "He was finalizing business matters,
Assets, property. He needed everything stable until it was secure. So I was inconvenient. The word tasted bitter. Ethan finally spoke. He said you hated him. I looked at him. Really looked at him, and in his face I saw something worse than betrayal. I saw confusion planted by someone else. I didn't hate him, I said gently. Ethan's jaw tightened. He said you tried to ruin our family. The irony nearly suffocated me. Our family? I whispered. Claire reached for Ethan's hand. He's very sick, she repeated softly. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They're giving him months, maybe less. The words should have felt like justice. They didn't. They felt hollow. What do you want from me? I asked. Claire hesitated. He wants to see you. There it was. The real reason. I had 15 years, I said flatly. He was ashamed. I stood up. No, he was strategic. There's a difference. Ethan's voice cut through the room. He cries at night. The statement hit harder than I expected. I looked at him again. He wasn't defending his father. He was explaining him. He says your name when he thinks no one can hear, Ethan continued. My chest tightened involuntarily. I don't care, I lied. Claire studied me carefully. He wrote something for you. She pulled an envelope from her bag. It was worn at the edges, like it had been opened and resealed more than once. My name was on the front, in his handwriting. The sight of it sent a tremor through me. I'm not promising anything. I'm not asking for a promise, she replied. I took the envelope. It felt heavier than paper should. Why bring him? I nodded toward Ethan. Claire didn't look away. Because he deserves to know his sister. The word hung in the air.
I didn't open the letter that morning. I placed it on my kitchen table and just stared at it. My name, written in his handwriting, felt like a ghost reaching across time. I made coffee, didn't drink it, sat down, stood up, walked past the envelope 3 times like it might explode if I got too close. 15 years of silence folded into paper. Finally, I picked it up. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet, no dramatic length, no pages of excuses, just one page. I unfolded it slowly. If you're reading this, then I finally did what I should have done years ago. No dear, no love, just words. I have rehearsed this apology in my head for 15 years. None of the versions are good enough. My throat tightened. You were never wrong. That line blurred instantly as tears filled my eyes. You were braver than I ever was. I exhaled shakily. I didn't kick you out because you exposed me. I kicked you out because you exposed your mother. My hands froze. What? I read it again. Your mother knew about Claire long before you did. We were separated in everything but paperwork. We agreed to keep the peace until you were older. My stomach twisted. When you confronted me, you forced her to face a reality she wasn't emotionally ready for. She begged me to fix it quietly. She begged me to make it disappear. The words felt heavier now, and I made the worst decision of my life. I already knew which one. I chose the easier child to lose. The paper slipped from my fingers. Easier? I was easier? I sat there for a long time, staring at the floor. He chose the easier child to lose, not because I deserved it, not because I was wrong, but because sacrificing me was simpler than confronting the collapse of 2 marriages. I picked the letter back up. You were strong, independent. You had opinions. I told myself you would survive. I told myself Ethan wouldn't. A cold realization washed over me. I wasn't discarded because I was weak. I was discarded because I was strong. And somehow that hurt even more. I thought time would fix it, that one day I'd explain, but the longer I waited, the harder it became. Shame grows in silence. It multiplies. My eyes scanned the final lines. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know you were never the problem. Dad. Dad. He signed it Dad after 15 years. I didn't cry loudly. The tears just fell quietly, steady and relentless. The narrative I had carried for over a decade shifted beneath me. I wasn't the destroyer. I was the scapegoat. And my mother? My mother had chosen survival over me. That realization hurt in a way my father's betrayal never fully had, because I expected selfishness from him. But from her? I had believed she was a victim. Now I wasn't so sure. I didn't go to the hospital that day, or the next. I walked around my apartment in a daze. Every memory from my childhood felt altered. Birthday parties, family dinners, vacations. How much of it had been staged? How long had they both been living parallel lives? I replayed that bookstore encounter in my head, the way she said, "Your father wouldn't want us talking." Not, "I don't want to." Not, "This is painful." She had deferred to him again, even years later. Was that love, or fear, or guilt? On the third night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before answering. Hello? It wasn't Claire. It was him. His voice was thinner, fragile. Hi. The sound of it cracked something inside me. We stayed silent for a few seconds, listening to each other breathe. I didn't know if you'd come, he said. I haven't, I replied. A weak chuckle. I guess I deserve that. There was a faint hospital monitor beeping in the background. You got my letter. Yes. Another pause. I meant every word. I closed my eyes. Why now? Because I'm running out of tomorrows. Honest, brutal. I needed you to know the truth before I go. Why didn't you fight for me? I asked suddenly. The question had lived in me for 15 years. Why didn't you fight for me? His breathing grew uneven. Because I was a coward. The simplicity of it stunned me. No excuses? I whispered. I've run out of those. We talked for 23 minutes about small things, about his work, about his treatment, about how Ethan struggles with math but loves drawing. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't demand anything. And somehow that made it harder. Before hanging up, he said something that unsettled me. "There's one more thing you need to know." My body went still. What? It wasn't just about the marriage. Cold spread through my chest. What are you talking about? There were financial decisions, legal risks. If the divorce happened publicly when it did, we would have lost everything. We? I asked sharply. Your mother and I. The room seemed to tilt. You're saying you kicked me out to protect money? No, I'm saying the timing mattered. The business was under investigation. If the scandal surfaced then, we could have faced charges. Charges? My heart started racing. What kind of charges? Silence. Dad? Another shaky breath. I moved assets into Claire's name. The implication hit instantly. You were laundering money. It wasn't like that. It sounds exactly like that. It was complicated. Complicated. That word again. My head spun. You married her to shield assets? Yes. The admission landed like a bomb. So the affair wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Yes. And when I threatened exposure, you endangered more than just the marriage. The truth slammed into place. I wasn't kicked out because I embarrassed him. I was kicked out because I threatened a financial crime. My niece. I spent that night awake, staring the ceiling. My apartment felt smaller. The letter from him lay on the coffee table like a bomb, and my phone's blank screen seemed to mock me. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. Every word, every pause, every revelation. A dying father, a secret marriage, a child I didn't know I had, and now potential legal exposure waiting for me in a hospital room. It felt like a movie where I had missed the first hour and was suddenly thrust into the climax. Morning came, gray and hesitant. I didn't eat breakfast, didn't shower, didn't even change out of the clothes I slept in. I couldn't, not yet. I packed a small bag, essentials only, phone charger, wallet, laptop, the letter, and my journal. I needed a record. The cab ride was silent. I stared out the window, watching city life carry on while my entire world shifted. Memories collided. Every time my father had said, "Don't come back," I could hear it now with new context, not just rage or anger, but fear. Fear that I would dismantle everything he had carefully built, everything he wanted to hide. I wondered, had I been a victim or a pawn? When I arrived at St. Mary's Hospital, Claire was waiting outside the sliding doors with Ethan. He gave me a small nod, no smiles, just that same intensity in his eyes. "You're late," Claire said softly. "I wasn't ready to come," I admitted. "I know, but he's waiting." The words made my chest tighten. We took the elevator up in silence, the hum of machinery, the antiseptic smell, the distant squeak of nurses' shoes. All of it felt like a threshold I couldn't cross back out of. When the doors opened to the 4th floor, room 412 was at the end of the hall. The hallway seemed longer than it was. Every step forward felt like walking into the past and the future simultaneously. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly. He was lying in the hospital bed, frail, thin, almost unrecognizable. His hair was grayer than I remembered. The lines on his face had deepened. But those eyes were still sharp, calculating, and unmistakably his. He looked at me and smiled weakly. "You came," he said. I swallowed hard. "I did," I said. He gestured for me to sit. "Do you want to know everything?" he asked. I nodded. "Good," he said, "because it's time you understood the full picture." He took a deep breath. 15 years ago, when you confronted me, I panicked. I was balancing two worlds, your mother's world and mine with Claire. I thought I could contain it, keep it quiet until you were older, but you forced my hand. "I didn't force anything," I said sharply. "I did the right thing." "Yes," he admitted, "and that's why I had to push you away. You threatened stability, the stability I needed to protect you and Ethan." I felt my blood boil. "Stability? I was a child. You threw me out. You chose her over me." He flinched. For the first time, I saw regret. He said, "I chose the easier option at the time. I thought it was temporary. I never imagined it would last this long. I thought maybe you'd forgive me later, that you'd understand." I laughed bitterly. "Understand? I was 17. You didn't just kick me out. You erased me." He nodded slowly. "I know, and I can't undo that, but I can explain why." He leaned back, fragile. "The marriage with Claire wasn't just about love. It was legal, business, assets, protection. If the divorce happened publicly, your mother and I could face criminal charges. I moved assets into her name to protect our family's wealth, and I needed you out of the picture temporarily to make it happen." I felt like the floor beneath me had disappeared. "You put me through hell to hide crimes?" "Not to hurt you, to protect you from collateral damage. I thought if you stayed out, you'd be safe. You were never supposed to be involved." I stared at him, the weight of 15 years pressing down on me. "Safe?" I whispered. "I was homeless, Dad, homeless, and you call that protection?" "Yes," he said, voice breaking slightly, "because I feared what the exposure would do to you emotionally, financially, everything. I was a coward. I handled it all wrong." Then he paused. "You need to know the full truth about Ethan." Ethan, standing quietly near the door, watched us with his arms crossed. "He is your half-brother," my father said. "He doesn't know the whole story yet, and I want him to understand before I'm gone." Ethan flinched. "I deserve to know," I said low. "You will, soon," he replied. "But first, there's more about the trust, about the business arrangements, the legal hoops that need to be jumped through. If I pass before you understand it, you could be liable." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "You've been named as a trustee in some of the assets. If the investigation reopens, you could be dragged in. I need to make sure you're protected." The letter, the envelope, the silence, the years, all of it suddenly made sense. He wasn't just asking for forgiveness. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. The words my father had whispered, "There's one thing you will see that will change everything you thought you knew about me and your mother," echoed in my head, louder than any alarm clock could. I paced my apartment, the letter still clutched in my hand, rereading it like a lifeline. The words seemed to shift each time I read them. 15 years of unanswered questions, half-truths, and suppressed rage were converging on me like a storm. I couldn't tell if I was terrified or curious, or both. The next morning, I arrived at St. Mary's Hospital earlier than expected. The corridor smelled faintly of antiseptic and old linoleum. The elevator ride felt eternal. Every ding of the floor indicator made my stomach lurch. When the doors opened to the 4th floor, Claire and Ethan were already there, waiting silently. "You're early," Claire said softly. "I couldn't wait," I admitted. Ethan's eyes met mine for the briefest moment, a mix of anxiety and anticipation in his gaze. I noticed the resemblance to my father, the same intensity in the eyes, but also the vulnerability of someone just learning the truth about the world. The moment I stepped into room 412, I knew it was different from all my previous visits. My father lay propped against pillows, thinner, paler, but the same commanding presence lingering even in weakness. His eyes locked onto mine with a strange urgency. "Sit," he said, voice barely above a whisper. I obeyed. My body moved automatically, as if some part of me had always known I would end up here. "There's something in the safe in my office, something I've hidden since before you were kicked out." I frowned. "A safe?" "Yes," he said. "It contains everything. Documents, letters, photographs, things you need to see to understand the decisions I made and the sacrifices your mother and I chose." I felt my pulse spike. "Why didn't you ever tell me about this?" I asked, trying to control the rising panic in my voice. "Because you weren't ready," he said quietly. "You were too young. You saw only fragments. The truth would have destroyed you at 17. I thought I could protect you by keeping it hidden." I clenched my fists. "Protect me? I lived on a couch for months. Months! How is that protection?" He winced but didn't argue. "I know. I failed. Every day I've regretted it." Claire finally spoke, her voice gentle. "He's serious. What's in that safe, it explains everything, and it's why he needs you to see it now." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "It's a lot," he said quietly, "but you deserve to know, too." I nodded. My mind was racing. The envelope, the letter, the phone calls, everything was converging into this single moment, a confrontation with truths I had spent a lifetime avoiding. My father motioned toward the envelope again. "Before you go to the safe, read this." It was another letter, thicker this time, heavier. My hand shook as I opened it. "I have left nothing undone. Everything you need to know is inside the safe. The mistakes I made, the lies, the betrayal, the legal and financial consequences are all there. I cannot ask for forgiveness, only understanding. You may hate me, you may never speak to me again, but you deserve to know the full truth. Dad." I swallowed hard. The words carried a weight I wasn't prepared for. Understanding, not forgiveness, not love, just truth. The drive to his office later that morning was silent. Claire had the keys. Ethan sat beside me quietly, and I gripped my journal in my lap as though it were a shield. The office door was heavy, solid oak, with the safe tucked behind a false panel in the wall. My father had always been meticulous, controlling, strategic. Now, even in weakness, he left no detail to chance. Claire unlocked the safe. A faint click echoed in the empty room. She pulled the door open slowly. Inside were stacks of folders, envelopes, photographs, legal papers, and journals, his life meticulously documented. I felt a wave of nausea. Where do I even begin? I pulled the first folder out. It contained legal documents, evidence of financial maneuvers, investments shifted to Claire's name, and contracts drafted meticulously to protect both families. I understood instantly why he had pushed me out. If I had been involved earlier, I could have inadvertently implicated myself or my mother. "This," I said, voice trembling, "is why you erased me?" "Yes," he whispered. "I had to shield you. I wanted to protect your future, even if it meant losing your presence." I clenched my fists. "Protect me? I lived on a couch for months. Months! How is that protection?" He winced but didn't argue. "I know. I failed. Every day I've regretted it." Claire finally spoke, her voice gentle. "He's serious. What's in that safe, it explains everything, and it's why he needs you to see it now." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "It's a lot," he said quietly, "but you deserve to know, too." I nodded. My mind was racing. The envelope, the letter, the phone calls, everything was converging into this single moment, a confrontation with truths I had spent a lifetime avoiding. My father motioned toward the envelope again. "Before you go to the safe, read this." It was another letter, thicker this time, heavier. My hand shook as I opened it. "I have left nothing undone. Everything you need to know is inside the safe. The mistakes I made, the lies, the betrayal, the legal and financial consequences are all there. I cannot ask for forgiveness, only understanding. You may hate me, you may never speak to me again, but you deserve to know the full truth. Dad." I swallowed hard. The words carried a weight I wasn't prepared for. Understanding, not forgiveness, not love, just truth. The drive to his office later that morning was silent. Claire had the keys. Ethan sat beside me quietly, and I gripped my journal in my lap as though it were a shield. The office door was heavy, solid oak, with the safe tucked behind a false panel in the wall. My father had always been meticulous. I braced myself, gripping the envelope and my father's journals tightly. The weight of 15 years pressed down like a physical force. My father's words had already begun to unravel everything I had believed about my life, my family, and myself. But he insisted there was one final truth, one last revelation that would change everything. He looked fragile, smaller than the man I had once known, yet in that moment his presence filled the room. His voice, though weak, carried urgency. "Your mother," he began, hesitating. His eyes darted to Claire, then back to me. She was not as innocent as you think." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously. He took a shaky breath. "When I met Claire, your mother was fully aware of the separation, of the plans I was making. She agreed to maintain the appearance of a traditional family, but only because she feared the scandal would destroy her social standing and your stability." I felt the words slam into me. Every memory of my mother's anger, confusion, and silence suddenly had new meaning. She let me be punished?" I whispered, disbelief cracking my voice. "Yes," he admitted. "She let you be pushed out. She chose to protect herself and the family image rather than defend you. I made the decisions, yes, but she was complicit." I staggered back, my mind spinning. 15 years of imagining my mother as a protector, someone who had silently suffered alongside me. All of it shattered. Ethan's face turned pale. He hadn't spoken yet, but now his fists clenched tightly. She let it happen?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Yes," I said, my voice breaking. "She watched it happen." I turned back to my father. "And you knew she would do nothing?" He nodded. His eyes were heavy with guilt. I feared she would intervene emotionally, but she convinced me that removing you temporarily was the safest course. I thought I could control the outcome. I was wrong. My hands shook violently. I looked at the stacks of documents, the photographs, the letters, the life I had built on lies and omissions. "Do you know what it feels like?" I asked, voice trembling, "to have your parents betray you? To realize that the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally chose secrecy, fear, and selfishness over you?" He flinched, but did not speak. The tension in the room was unbearable. Ethan's eyes were wide, glued to the unfolding truth. "Why did you wait 15 years to tell me? Why now? Why not before this all collapses?" He swallowed. "Because I was weak, because I was afraid, because I wanted to protect you, even if it meant keeping you from me. And now I have no more time." I slammed my hand on the desk, papers rattling. "You don't get to justify this. 15 years. You erased me from your life, and now you want me to, what, heal your guilt?" "No," he whispered. "I want you to survive it, to know the truth before it's too late, to protect yourself from the consequences of my mistakes." I stared at him, trembling, a mixture of rage, confusion, and grief boiling inside me. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with secrets and half-truths finally spilling into the open. Claire spoke softly, almost too quietly to hear. "He's telling the truth, and there's more you need to see. Documents that explain every decision, every transaction, every lie. They're complicated, but they'll protect you." I glanced at Ethan. His hands were trembling now, gripping his hoodie. "Do you understand?" I asked him directly. He nodded slowly. "I think so." I turned back to my father. "What else?" He exhaled shakily. "Everything you thought you knew about the past, about your mother, about Claire, about me, is incomplete. The documents in the safe explain it all. But there's one thing, one revelation that will change your perception of everything. Your mother, your father, even me." I felt my chest tighten. The envelope, the journals, the safe, all of it suddenly meant nothing compared to what I was about to hear. "Tell me," I said, voice barely a whisper. He hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Your mother was involved in decisions that indirectly endangered you. She chose the path that she thought would protect her and the family's wealth over your well-being. She allowed you to be cast out, believing you would be safe emotionally and financially, but in doing so, she betrayed you." The room felt like it had shifted on its axis. 15 years of memories, birthdays, holidays, moments of joy now felt tainted with betrayal. Ethan stepped back. "So she's not the victim?" "No," I said quietly, tears streaming down my face. "She was part of it. She helped orchestrate my exile." The tension between past and present, love and betrayal blurred. Rage collided with grief. I could feel it boiling inside me, threatening to consume me. My father's voice broke the silence. I know what you feel. I know I failed you. I cannot ask for forgiveness, but I'm telling you the truth because it's all I can give you now." I shook my head. "It's not enough. 15 years gone. My entire life stolen." He reached a trembling hand toward me. "I never stopped thinking of you. Never. And now I have only days to explain, to make it right as much as I can." I felt a surge of conflicting emotions, rage, grief, and a strange sense of duty. Despite everything, I knew he needed me to act, to make decisions, to face the consequences of the choices he made. "Fine," I said finally, my voice cold but steady. "I'll listen, I'll see everything, but don't expect reconciliation." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "I don't." Claire handed me a folder from the safe. Inside were letters, photographs, and legal documents detailing the full extent of the family's hidden life. My father's handwriting sprawled across pages. I opened the folder with trembling hands, fully aware that my life was about to change forever. The first papers were legal documents, trusts, accounts, and business agreements. I skimmed quickly, but the weight of responsibility hit immediately. I was named as a trustee in multiple holdings. Every asset, every investment, every contingency plan, everything my father and Claire had orchestrated was now partially my responsibility. The financial implications were staggering. Mistakes could cost not only me, but Ethan as well. I set the papers aside and moved to the photographs. They weren't just any photographs. They were intimate, hidden moments from my childhood. Birthdays my parents pretended I didn't exist at. Family vacations where my mother's smile barely touched her eyes. Letters my father wrote but never sent. Seeing them now, I realized something strange. The images weren't just proof of betrayal. They were evidence of love. Flawed and complicated, but love nonetheless. I couldn't help but notice how my mother's carefully curated image of propriety contrasted sharply with the reality these photos revealed. She had maintained appearances at the cost of my well-being. I had lived my life believing in a certain version of her, but now I saw the truth. She was human, flawed, fearful, capable of cruelty to protect herself, yet still my mother. The last set of documents was the most personal. Letters my father had never sent. Some were to me, some to Claire, some to my mother. The one addressed to me read like a confession, a final attempt to reconcile the past. "I have failed you in ways I cannot begin to repair. I chose convenience over honesty, and for that, I am ashamed. You were brave, independent, and undeserving of my mistakes. Know this, I never stopped loving you. Even when I erased your presence, I carried you in my heart. Forgive me if you can, and forgive yourself for the pain that was never yours to bear." I cried quietly, the tears streaming down in slow, steady lines. 15 years of anger, frustration, and heartbreak were pouring out. For the first time, I didn't feel like the betrayed child. I felt like a survivor. Ethan moved closer and handed me a photo of the three of us together, him, my father, and me, taken secretly during a trip he had orchestrated to visit me as a child, without me knowing. My father had kept these moments hidden, but they proved that amidst all the deception, he had tried in his own way to remain present. Claire watched quietly, saying nothing. She didn't need to. Her presence conveyed an unspoken apology, her loyalty divided yet sincere. She had been complicit, yes, but she had also been a stabilizing force, protecting Ethan and the fragile bonds of our fractured family. My father's breathing grew heavier. He looked at me with exhaustion in his eyes. "It's time," he whispered. "I have said what I needed to say. I've revealed everything. It's your choice now. How you handle this defines the future." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down. I wasn't just processing betrayal. I was facing choices that would shape not only my life, but Ethan's and even my mother's future. The next few hours were surreal. My father guided me through the financial and legal details, clarifying every clause, every obligation. I realized that 15 years of secrecy had left consequences in my lap. But amidst the complexity, there was clarity. For the first time, I understood the full picture. Ethan was by my side the entire time, quietly absorbing, occasionally asking questions, occasionally staring at our father with a mixture of awe and fear. I realized in that moment that he had grown up thinking family was simple, linear, but our story was messy, layered with deception, secrecy, and flawed love. And yet, here he was, learning the truth, not with bitterness, but with curiosity and care. Later, when my father's breathing became labored, Claire quietly led Ethan out of the room. She returned a few minutes later and handed me my father's hand. It was fragile, like a bird in winter. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "You've endured more than anyone should. You've become stronger than I ever imagined. Protect your brother, protect yourself, and remember, love doesn't always come in clear packages. Sometimes it comes hidden beneath mistakes, fear, and failure." I squeezed his hand, the warmth of it both comforting and terrifying. "I'll try," I said softly. "I'll protect him. I'll protect myself. I'll survive." He smiled faintly, closing his eyes. "That's all I ever wanted." By the next morning, my father was gone. The room felt empty in a way that was suffocating yet liberating. The weight of secrets had been lifted, but the responsibility remained. I had inherited not just assets, but the knowledge of betrayal, sacrifice, and love interwoven in the most complicated tapestry I could imagine. I turned to Ethan, who was still processing everything silently. "We're in this together now," I said. "No more secrets, no more lies." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I'm glad you're here," he whispered. For the first time, I felt like the older sister I had never been allowed to be. Weeks later, I reached out to my mother. I didn't do it for closure. I didn't do it for forgiveness. I did it because I needed the truth directly from her. She didn't deny anything. She didn't offer excuses. She simply said, "I was afraid. I made choices I thought were best for you. I failed. I am sorry. That's all I can give you." I realized that some people aren't heroes. Some people aren't villains. Some people are human, flawed, and scared, and that is their truth. Over the following months, Ethan and I rebuilt a relationship. Not perfectly, not easily, but with honesty and transparency. We shared memories, laughed at small things, and cried over what had been lost. I learned